All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Founders Cut. Today, I'm super excited to talk to Allisa, the founder and CEO of Nanodropper. We got to meet a few months back as she was on the Zoom trail looking for investors, and I thought it'd be a great conversation to talk to a founder that's building a cool, minimal, in a simple, elegant way, a solution for something that's been unaddressed for I don't know, decades at this point, right? So, Alyssa, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to start these conversations more with just more understanding the person before we dive deeper into the company. So, we'd love to just kind of hear more about your background before you got to becoming the CEO of a medical device company startup.
Absolutely. So hi everyone. My name is Alyssa, and I'm actually from Seattle, Washington. I'm not there right now. I'm in Rochester, Minnesota. But my academic journey started in Seattle, where I studied at the University of Washington. My majors were biology and psychology, and I put those two together and dove headfirst into neuroscience research. My specific interest was in understanding addiction behaviors and substance use disorders within psychology and neuroscience. So that was actually my first experience in research. I joined Dr. Charlie Chapkin's lab, where we studied the role of the kappa opioid receptor, which is one of the subtypes of opioid receptors in the body, and its ability to modulate chronic stress and pro addiction behaviors. And so I really enjoyed translational research and my experience there and continued after I graduated from undergrad. So that was kind of my world. I was, you know, eat, breathe, sleep, Kappa all the way. And I started getting curious about how the research I was doing in the lab translated to real live medicine and how it affected people. So that was the motivation behind starting volunteering work with a local harm reduction alliance called the People's Harm Reduction Alliance. They're the most well known for their needle dispensary program. And so I got to work side by side, really incredible people who taught me all about the harm reductionist approach and problem solving and what it really means to problem solve with the end user in mind. And I think it was really critical in developing how I problem solve problems that I see, including how Nanodropper was born.
Awesome. And then what brought you to Minnesota then? Obviously, we're a long way from Washington State, so curious how you got here.
Yeah. So while I was volunteering with the Harm Reduction Alliance, I think I was really inspired by how immediate of an effect you can have when you are at the front lines of medicine. And so, although I still love my research, I was inspired to apply to medical school, and I found the person to person, like the actual being the actual person delivering the care, really rewarding. So I applied in 2017, and that's what brought me here to Rochester. I was a Mayo medical student, and I just finished my 4 years back in May.
Tell me more about Nanodropper. How did that come up? What inspired you to explore the problem, the pain point, and then I obviously like which turned into the opportunity, right? So, what was the aha moment that got you to say this is worth your time and energy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nanodropper was actually inspired by an article that I read while I was in the process of applying to medical schools. There was an article titled "Drug Companies Make Eyedrops Too Big and You Pay for the Waste." It was um, written by Marshall Allen, who's a really gifted storyteller and investigative journalist that really focuses on a lot of pain points that patients experience trying to navigate our US healthcare system. It was originally published on ProPublica. I always like to give them a shout out because it's the article that literally changed my life. and my career trajectory. Um, un, in the article, it described how there was this problem of oversized eye drops. A lot of people have had the experience of administering eye drops themselves, where you put in a drop and there's always that little bit that trickles down your cheek. Well, this waste was becoming a financial barrier for folks using really expensive medications like those for glaucoma, where these medications that are up to 5 times too big for the human eye, like literally the droplet size is too big, was costing about $500 per bottle for patients. And of course, your first thought is, well, people have insurance. But even with insurance, about a quarter of patients are chronically running out of their eye drops before insurance will cover the next refill. Um, and this is just by the fact that people miss their eye. I mean, I have pretty good vision and dexterity, and I still miss my eye when I put in eye drops. So putting all of that together, I realized that there was an opportunity here where if I could learn what the actual therapeutic volume of eye drops would be, like what is the minimum size that would be therapeutic for patients, and cut out the rest of the medication waste and actually give the ability to do so into the patient's hands, I could help tip the scales a little bit. And that's how we came up with an adapter for eye drop medication bottles that reduces the drop size to something that's more compatible with the physiology of the human eye.
So you mentioned we. How did you kind of build your team out in the early days?
Yeah, my team of 4 co-founders co-founded the business, and we are still together today. I'm joined by Elias, who is our COO. His background is in mechanical engineering, so he was the first person I went to. I was like, hey, I think he's a car guy. So I was like, hey, I think we can make an aftermarket part for patients to reduce the droplet size. So that's kind of where we started. We still have the picture of our whiteboard, the first whiteboarding session. And then I looked to people that I had worked with and I trusted and really respected in their careers. So I picked Jenny, who was a grad student in the same lab, the same neuroscience lab as me. And then I asked Mackenzie, who I had seen growth from the time that she was a freshman in undergrad. She had joined the lab, and then so I've been able to see her entire career, which has also been really cool. So I brought the 4 of us together and started exploring whether this was a an idea with merit that could be practical and actually commercializable.
Let's talk a little bit about the money side of it, right? You're building a business, and you talked about the impact from a payer and slash patient perspective.
Mhm.
How much money is in the eye drop space? Like, what is if you can reduce the volume of an eye drop by all the way up to a fifth of a drop? How much? What's the impact that you're potentially making for different disease states, but even just in general regular eye drops?
Yeah. So when you're thinking about market size for a company like ours, we are classified as a micro volume delivery device of topical ophthalmics. And we are the first to commercialize in this space. So we didn't have nice, neat numbers to work with in the beginning. So we did some calculations based on publicly available data published by CMS. That's your
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid and Medicare Part D. And so we looked at the back then 2017, and now we've recalculated using the 2019 numbers and looked at how many prescriptions were filled slash reimbursed by how many beneficiaries, and calculated bottom up our market. So we used a few assumptions like an annual supply of Nanodropper would be 4, since we're able to reduce um, a yearly 12 bottle prescription down to about 3 or 4. And so We multiplied the appropriate numbers and got to a $7 billion US market for microvolume delivery devices that are priced at our MSRP.
And that's for glaucoma. Is that for that market?
It's actually all medications, all eye drop
Got it.
medications. And then
So
when you
in
look at,
general, are they on a monthly prescription like regimen? Is that what it's currently at? One bottle a month?
yeah, so glaucoma is a chronic degenerative disorder. And
Sure.
so, yeah, once you're diagnosed with ocular hypertension, which is the increase in intraocular pressure without the damage yet, or with the damage, which we call glaucoma, you are on these medications that's daily for the rest of your life. You might get what some people call like an eye drop vacation by being able to go through surgical interventions or minimally invasive procedures. But at one point or another, you will be dependent on these drops to halt the disease progression. Most patients start with one medication and then they'll get bumped up to two. We have seen patients who are on 3+ medications, which isn't ideal. So we know from the data that the more number of drops that patients have to be responsible for, the lower the adherence rate, and so poorer the outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talk me through some of the early days, some of the milestones that you're proud of, leading, up until today, right? So in the last 4.5, 5 years of building this out, talk through some of the milestones that you've accomplished.
Yeah, let me think for a sec. I guess the first milestone that comes to mind is just being able to commercialize a sterile medical device, making this actually available for patients to use. Our initial hypothesis and kind of business model that we were thinking of is looking at it on a really grand scale. We still want to work with them, and that's the payers, the people who are paying the most for the problem of oversized eye drops. But we realized that the amount of data that we have to collect to be able to show pharmacoeconomic data over a long period of time, tracking outcomes data, to be able to go into these contracts would mean that it's years before it's actually available for patients.
Hmm.
So we have to kind of rethink the paradigm and think about how can we get this safely the soonest way possible into the patient's hands. And so we decided that we would work and partner directly with the eye care doctors, sell wholesale to them, and then they can actually help close the education gap as well with a new product. And so we're really proud of the fact that we were able to really go full sprint
Hmm.
into establishing our supply chain and launching our product within 2 years of incorporation. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's
that's amazing.
probably a big milestone.
That's a huge accomplishment. So for people that might be listening that go through eye drops for whatever reason they might have them, uh, is is it currently the only way to get them is through your eye doctor if they carry them, or can they go to the website and buy their own, or what are the methods of acquisition at the moment?
Yeah, we were really focused on access in the beginning, and we still are. I mean, we're trying to solve the problem of access to these expensive but vision saving medications. So, in addition to partnering with eye care clinics, we have about 1,500 in all 50 US states plus
Hmm.
DC. We still recognize that there's a lot of folks who their closest partner clinic would be quite a while away. So we do make it available on our website at nanodropper.com. And the patients are responsible for shipping, but if you get an annual supply, we do comp shipping.
Got it. Cool. Well, I think that's important too. Yeah, weighing the pros and cons of getting more clinical data versus getting to market faster. There are drawbacks and benefits to both, but it's very impressive to know that within 2 years of, forming your company, you have product out the door because you're gonna learn a lot from it. You're gonna get a lot of good valuable feedback, and also I think build some really long-lasting customers that become your evangelist down the road for the product to
Absolutely.
succeed. Part of the reason I do this is because I want to get more exposure to the right people. What are the types of folks you're trying to get connected with today? Whether it's potential clients, potential customers, potential whatever. Love to give you a chance to talk about the types of folks you're most interested in connecting with at the moment.
Yeah. Um, I mean, thanks for making that platform available. I mean, the first group of people that we want to focus on is always going to be our patients. The typical glaucoma patient just tends to be older, and they aren't super social media savvy, where we would be able to reach them via Instagram ads and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually rely on their caregivers,
Sure.
their children, their grandkids who would be exposed to stories like this about Nanodropper and help bring it to their parents or grandparents. I mean, just learning from our patients and their stories, we know that it is an all hands on deck kind of effort to take care of our older adults in our lives. And so that would be my number one.
Mm-hmm.
And for those folks who are listening in that are in the payer systems, I think the impact can be scaled much faster at a much grander scale if we're able to work top down with the payers. When we looked at CMS data with nanodropper integration, we could have saved the system about $3 billion last year in just wasted medication
Wow.
that's being dabbed by a tissue or
Yeah.
rolling down someone's cheek.
Sure. Outside of glaucoma, what are some other use cases that you think are, very, very um, near term on the roadmap for you all to focus on?
Yeah, in addition to glaucoma, we're focused on post-operative medications. You get a cocktail of medications after your cataract surgery. Cataracts is almost ubiquitous because we're living long enough. And in addition to that, any uh, off-label prescription medications, like in the management of pediatric progressive myopia.
Mm,
Now we have these drops available, but they're not FDA approved for that indication. And so it's an out-of-pocket cost for those families. Outside of the prescription medication world, we know that preservative exposure to the eye over a long period of time can harm corneal health. And so, even those folks that are listening in, that are using re-wetting drops for dry
mm,
eyes, the exposure to the preservative can be reduced by literally using a smaller drop.
sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And then as we look forward into the rest of the new year of 2023, anything exciting on the roadmap that people should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so I know I mentioned clinical trials a little bit ago, but we are really excited to get the final numbers for how smaller drops can actually reduce both local and systemic side effects. And so, um, yeah, I'm really excited to see that data finished. And yeah, please keep an eye out for that. um, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Nanodropper can not only reduce that financial barrier, but also improve tolerability, which in combination, all of the above can help patients adhere better to their medications and preserve more of their vision.
Love it. Anyone out there that you want to shout out while you have a chance to give kudos to or thanks, anything like that?
Oh my gosh, I always like to give my first shout out to Marshall Allen, then my team. My team is just, I mean, I'm so grateful for them. I was a medical student entrepreneur. Like people ask me how I've done it, and it's really not something about me, but really a testament to how supportive and awesome my team has been. And along with them, our advisors, our board have just been incredibly supportive through really challenging times in the last few years. And they really deserve all of our gratitude, our team's gratitude for helping us come out ahead.
I love it. I love it. I think it's always important to remember who helped you get to where you are today, because they'll probably be there to help you to get to where you need to go tomorrow as well. So for those of you that are listening and want to be reminded of how you can get to their website, it's www.nanodropper.com. Correct.
Yep.
And if you're interested about learning more about it, I'm sure you can find a contact us on their website to reach out and ask questions for you or someone in your life that might want it. So if you're a payer, even a provider in the space of eye care, and also obviously investors or customers, or even maybe someone that wants to join the team, feel free to reach out to Allisa. I'm sure she'd be very interested in learning more about what your interests are. So thank you again for making the time to join on
Thank
the,
you.
the show. And, I look forward to seeing your product, maybe hopefully one day on every bottle top, right? So
Hmm.
that's the world it should be, right? We should all be focused on sustainability, reduction of waste, and better outcomes for patients. So I love the
Absolutely.
idea of such an elegant, simple solution that can solve such an expensive problem. So thanks again for joining me.
Thanks for having me.